Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Rez Infinite. It's still very weird that there isn't at least a little bit of a subtle song playing in the menu. Um, we gave it our best try without putting a lot of time and effort into it to unlock some of the features in the main game. But like beating direct assault on normal and then having what I assume are difficulty level increases for ambient punk, old school psychedelic, and trance is just asking way too much. And getting 95% shot down rate for unlocking boss rush is asking a little too much. Honestly, you should get boss rush unlocked by default just by beating the game. Maybe had they gone with more of a traditional easy, normal, and hard mode, then you could say you have to beat the game at least on normal mode to unlock boss rush. On top of that, just having to play the game for a really long amount of time or get 100% shot down ratio, to get under other forms, or having to do score attack a ton of times to get other beam types, or having to get high scores in score attack mode to get different camera views, or clearing the highest level of score attack to get immortality, or achieving a high score in boss rush mode to get infinite overdrive. All of that is very just kind of punishing, arbitrary. Like, really, these things should just unlock based off of easier challenges, or they should have just unlocked in general before you by beating the main game. So there's a lot of value that they've just gated away from most players, and just an experience that they obviously, the creators of this game, the porters of the original Rez, the people making extra features for Rez Infinite, they put a lot of effort into content that the vast majority of the player base will just never see, which is just wasteful, when it would be a lot nicer for there to be maybe even an easy mode being added to the game, instead of locking things that would change the experience but not actually make it that easier. To get 100% shot down ratio in each of the levels is kind of crazy, and then to get 100% support items is a little less crazy. So yeah, none of that's going to happen, which then just takes us to Area X. Now, I know because of achievements that there's at least two, maybe three, probably three alternate final bosses, so there very well may be an argument to doing Area X multiple times. I'm going to play it per the game suggestion. They highly recommend it with a controller, so I'm going to play it with a controller, knowing that that suggestion is actually pretty wrong, and the move is to very much instead play with a mouse on PC. Now, interestingly, there's actually more control in Area X, in that you can pull yourself backwards or boost yourself forwards with the right trigger and the right bump, which, yeah, that is highlighting that this content must have been, or at least this controller layout must have been designed for a much later generation of controllers. Like, although, no, if this was a PlayStation 1 game, PlayStation 1 almost certainly had an R1 and an R2 and an L1 and an L2, even then, in its first generation. It's just, it would be things like the I guess the Nintendo 64 would have been the only console that would have only had a Z trigger and no bump buttons to work with it. I think it had bumps though too. Yeah. It does certainly change the experience though quite a bit if you can slow down and speed up on the on-rail shooting. Noticeably here. Some of this stuff also could have been better explained in the main game as far as whether or not in Scortac mode, if you get extra evolution things after you're at the final form, do you get points? So there you see where an easy mode could have been added to the original Rez game, and it seems like there was just too much reverence for the original game that they didn't really want to change anything, so they added a bunch of content around it. Score attack mode is about the only thing that's slightly different from what the main play section is for Rez. And if we just wanted to see it, we could certainly just play traveling, but I don't think there's really a good reason to do that. So let's log out. It's funny that the mouse cursor pops up there and just play. So they're even showing you the controls as far as boosting and flying, and the controls are just in an area. So you just straight up don't start moving until you get to this point. Intuition blue, dead red is incoming articles. So we've got a different kind of cursor here. I'd say everything in this area X feels different. I would say it feels like this is years later music. This is not the same kind of techno trance music of the same era. The area is empty. They've gotten rid of the heads-up display. Pretty much. No overdrive. We've got new viruses. The analyzation section, much bigger, taking up a lot more of the screen. Maybe this is supposed to be the implication that this is a whole new server past the events and the good ending, which I never actually succeeded in showing, of saving the AI Eve in the area named Eden. But yeah, this is not vector graphics per se. Now, this is instead a pointillized texture on what would be 3D models. And with that pointillization, you could increase or decrease the number of points based on the resolution. It almost at the beginning felt like what was going to happen is you would just have a central area and you are mostly just going to fly in circles with enemies attacking wave after wave. Noticeably, these enemies here are not just like one-hit enemies. We are fighting something that is stronger and that is flying and floating around me. Maybe at that level there's also a case that the viruses have evolved to be more robust. Or I just hit the overdrive button just to see if maybe that would activate something. It's definitely less of an on-rails shooter now, and more of a on-rails arena shooter, I guess is what I might describe it as. It's a weird potential comparison to make, but I guess the return of the Obra Dinn might have a somewhat similar art style in the pointalization, although what they're doing with Obra Dinn there is fairly different. This does feel like this is going to create a situation where in more of a 3D perspective you're going to have to focus on memorization of where enemies are coming from, or this game is just going to have to be rather more generous, which maybe it is just being rather more generous. Like I'm being pointed towards something, but I'm not seeing what the something is. Yeah. Seems almost like you have to point yourself in a certain direction because you're going to go further in that direction. If I try and slow down a little bit, would that help? No, you kind of need to be at least that first speed. And you can't pick by the looks of it. You have to figure out which one you're supposed to be targeting. Well, maybe you can pick. So you've got this floating server planet. It's almost like Cybertron. And then when you get close enough, you can attack it. It's like they're fireworks, basically. Weirdly, this does really give off the feeling, though, that everything is supposed to just be more of a trance-like state, because it's just so much more forgiving in this sequence. Nothing's really shooting at me. I don't think I could really even be knocked down. Let's see. Speed up a little bit. So you only really get a boost. So there's normal fly mode, the boost mode, and the come to a complete stop mode. And so there was definitely a loss of momentum there, but that definitely also just feels like a much more modern take on the idea of a video game not having... Whoops, I did get hit there, so I am in now a dangerous position. See, weirdly, there's like 2 targets at the same time. Well, I guess they're supposed to be cameras or something. I shot all of those, but apparently I didn't shoot them enough times. It's a little weird that the buttons are backwards in my mind. I would think right bump would be stop, not go forward, and that right trigger would be go forward. Evolution pieces are just not the same. All the visuals have been redone. So you would think that this Area X mode would potentially lean into the idea of why not convert all of the original game to look more like this. You probably couldn't redo the sound easily, but and clearly they just want you to boost to get to this point. And there you have a new Eve-like character with long flowing hair, which almost certainly the original Rez would not have been able to render long flowing fluid dynamic hair movement. Weirdly though, it doesn't feel like there's a target here. Very often it feels like the game is just intentionally putting me in the stationary mode again. We can hear the vocals kicking in on a song. It is an interesting thought, certainly, as far as just, you already have a unique, like, cult fandom game here, so you're not gonna get your average, what I like to describe as gamer bro, Call of Duty, NBA 2K player playing this game. Most people probably could tell just by the visuals and the music that this is a Japanese company that made this game, and a Japanese team and Japanese singers. So while it probably would have been considered a problem to have deep Japanese vocals in the music in the original Rez, nowadays you could certainly probably get away with that. Or you could even have English voice actors dub over the Japanese vocals that just have more vocals in general. There is a small thought in my mind, certainly, around these levels, since they're long enough that you could have an entire tale being told in the lyrics of a song, like a opera or a musical. Difference there being operas, I think you sing every word, even if it's not really backed by being lyrical, whereas musical has the opportunity to have some lines of dialogue spoken and not sung. And the words can be used fairly interchangeably based on just the desires of the creator. It's rather long at this point. You need a little bit of falling action. There's a mobile game I've been playing recently on Android called Memento Mori. I think I may have gotten hit there, I'm not sure. I missed the overdrive mode, but honestly that does purify this experience by not having it, because then it is just telling you you have to do well or not. You're not going to get any assistance. Maybe there's a middle ground where the overdrive mode could have activated once you were hit and cleared the screen as a way of letting you catch up. But yeah, this mobile game Memento Mori has a bunch of what they call laments, or songs, for every single of the collectible characters, and they've put a lot of polish in these songs, and had English voice actors dub it and sing it in English, and sing it probably in French too, since they also support that language. I wish we had subtitles for the song. Can I play? Oh yeah, the credits are still going. It says keep moving on. Let's go. Let's see what happens. Yeah, a much better rendering and higher resolution rendering of... If we can't go towards her, let's go away. It's interesting that have the credits. I can't really boost, but it is just an arena wall. I honestly was expecting more from this area. Once again, it feels like the main game is just being told that it can't be changed or modified in any way. Otherwise, it would be really wise to try and remake each of those levels in this style, and see how well you can do that. Apologies if you really wanted to see the credits. So we shot down 93.7%, not over 95%. Okay. So there's just no indication at all that there is a another boss battle here, or another reason to do this again, other than there's an achievement that says called Blue Butterfly. It says defeat the standard final boss in Area X with a shot down of 95% or higher, and then there's another achievement that says defeat the alternate final boss of Area X with a shot down of 95% or higher. And then, yeah, weirdly, the achievement that is even less collected after that is to achieve 100% shot down and item collection for area 1 through 5 of the main game, or play for 10 hours, which the fact that only 1% of players have achieved that number shows that not that many people really are going to play the game for 10 hours. And it is an in-game counter, not including trance mode, by the looks of it. You don't get the tutorial the second time. If I was to just straight up slow down, though, and stop moving forward, that probably doesn't break any cycles. I assume the waves only spawn when you get close enough to them. Wow, the game is getting really frame ratey now, and there's no real excuse for that, other than possibly I do have the game turned up at too high of a resolution, which, if anything, I guess that would just indicate that the rest of the main game wasn't really pushing the graphics that hard, which, yeah, that makes sense. So all we can do is give it the college try, I guess. I could be playing with the mouse. That would be the other option. But yeah, give it the old college try as far as hitting all the enemies and getting the shot down ratio. Pyramids being here from Area X, I don't think that makes a ton of sense. It really just makes Area X feel like it's doing a slight homage to Mars, but is it really doing as much of an homage to the other levels? Or is it really just the case that the other levels aren't even that memorable? There's an interesting twist here in that these creatures are seemingly coming and warping out of the images. There's still a little bit of misunderstanding here in my mind as far as just whether these enemies are shooting off missiles that I should let them shoot off missiles so I can get a higher shot down ratio, or if I should try to stop them from shooting off missiles early. I'll also say the cursor here is not helpful enough for what it's supposed to be, to point you in the right directions and show you where enemies may be. Also, doesn't really feel like you can do as good of a job really leveling up as much. That there is seemingly no real accommodation for trying to get to a 5th or 6th level form. Of course, I'm also not really playing, right? So can I really blame the game for... Maybe I should turn the other direction. That would probably be wiser. That if I had gone in this direction against the spin, I like the idea that maybe this is supposed to be fireworks, but if it was supposed to be fireworks and this whole thing was supposed to be a celebration, I think they kind of failed to stick to that thematic depiction. So otherwise it just gives off the feeling that it's just a weird choice for a sound effect. I wouldn't be surprised though if what happens is you end up having to maybe pick a side here, and I feel like the first time we took out the orange first, and now this time it feels like we took out the blue. Although maybe that is there now. That's the case where I've chosen to not shoot a bunch of things, and so my shot down ratio is not going to be over 95% because of it. Yeah. Pretty obvious though, you would have to spend the extra effort to determine when you want the character to be flying forward and when you want the character to be standing still, which that's true in most games, in fairness. Like, there are times in Resident Evil 4 in comparison where you are in an arena fighting a boss and you're just locked in that section, and then there are times when you are totally capable of running forward at whatever pace you choose. So I see little dots being flown towards me, and I'm more evolved this time. But this is basically just your falling action. Yep, still not really getting the swooping action. I would argue it's very possible that the swooping action in this case doesn't actually work anywhere as well. I guess the game may be trying to imply that it could work, but I just don't think it really can, because it's showing these light up as squares, so that might be an indication of where the next enemy would be coming from, but it's not really where the next enemies are coming from. It took quite a long time for that wall to break down. And so I don't know, unless maybe I actively boosted and flew towards the enemies. I feel like I very possibly missed some things over here, but yeah, really don't have time to try and hit it. And yeah, I took a hit because of my goofing off there. Yeah, they really have never, even in this evolved version, have quite figured out how to let the player recover from his mistakes. It is just 100% all stick, no carrot, as far as the challenge. It's very pre-Dark Souls, or pre-Demon Souls, punishing style of gameplay, which definitely was very common in Japanese games too, particularly short Japanese games that are light on content. It's a shame that a game like this wasn't released in more of the Mario Maker era of games, in which you could see potentially fans making their own levels. It would be difficult probably to make your own levels or make a level editor for this game, but not crazy impossible. I'm just being totally surrounded. I guess anywhere you see a square, that's where a squid may appear. Anywhere where you see green dots, that's where a missile may appear. You'd think that as they're getting destroyed, maybe you or her are gaining more pixels, more energy potentially. Now, I'm not moving forward at the moment though at all, so I'm in this static mode, and I don't know if I'm supposed to be in the static mode or what. Like, I don't think it really would benefit me much to to get closer. Although if I was closer, I could probably do damage a little bit faster. Theoretically, if I was right next to her, I could just hit her over and over again. I'm seeing birds fly out of her this time, and I feel like it was butterflies before. So this may just be the alternate version of her. Was there really any noticeable difference that time? No. And so, unfortunately, this really does just put you in this weird situation where you just awkwardly have to give up on the game. Like, unless I got 95% or something else unlocked for doing this a second time, I don't feel like it's worth my effort to do Area X a third time. I could have sworn there was a game where you were flying around fighting a space whale, and I wonder if that was something like Bayonetta or maybe even a Sonic game. I know you fight a whale in one of the Sonic games, but I almost have this vague memory of flying around the space whale and fighting the space whale, and it certainly feels like that would have been something in a game like this, but I guess not. With the exception of Area X showing the butterflies and the birds, everything you fight as a virus looks very insect-like, virus-like, just at a very large scale. So the visual themes of Rez are pretty much, you have the hacker avatar of the character you're playing as, you have Eve, and then you have this character who could be Eve or could be something again. You are born again, savior of your existence until the journey can begin anew, it says at the end. So there was a small thing being said there on the credits, and maybe there was something slightly different being said previously. Which that is a great example of making a poor decision in that you let your player fly around as the credits are going. So I did even worse the second time playing Area X. So yeah, let's just wrap up the series here, just highlighting what can you kind of expect to accomplish if you're a decent player, or if you've played Rez Infinite once before and then waited over 10 years to play it a second time, which arguably, unless you're just really short on games to play or really love this game, that's probably how you're going to experience it. So, if my experience is to be anywhere close to accurate, which I honestly think it might actually be a little too good of an experience, because I imagine for first time players you might be stuck at even lower numbers as far as shot down rate and support item pickup. I'm actually quite shocked looking at Area 1 here and seeing that I got 99.21% at shot down rate in the first area, which in fairness, the first area is the easiest by far. Area 2, 97.61%, so you can see how I started to get worse. Area 3, 98%. Area 4, 98.58%. And Area 5 is 93.69%. Now, compared to Area X, I still feel like there's more of a story being told because of the narrative and the text, and there's just more of a game experience really happening in Area 5 compared to Area X. It would have made a lot of sense if Area X was supposed to be this reimagining of Rez, that you would at least have a reimagined version of each of the bosses and have a boss rush fight at the end, or at least show a picture of them. But yeah, I'm actually surprised I did as well on play mode, but none of that really matters. And then I tried each of the score attack modes and did not get a high score for any of the areas. So yeah, nor am I interested in going any further to try to do that. I tried direct assault mode and the game got wonky. The game got wonky in 2 different places in this game. I just don't see a real reason why this game should have gotten that wonky or had stuttering slowdown, other than maybe I had the graphics too high, which at a certain point that might be a case that maybe if you just turn the resolution way down and all the anti-aliasing, a lot of that anti-aliasing stuff is either going to help quite a lot or it's going to do absolutely nothing at all for this vector style graphics. There almost certainly hasn't been a heavy push to put more transistors and chips and graphics cards to render vector-based graphics and have more images that look like this done in a more efficient way, since most games do not look like this. Although it would be interesting, since this was listed as an Unreal Engine 4 game, if they pushed it to the new Unreal Engine 5 and introduced the Nanite plugin for rendering things more efficiently, Rez might look way different and way better and run a lot smoother. We did the Lost area, which doesn't have a boss battle, which just makes it feel terrible. We played with the trance mission, which is just the audio choice there for music I think is terrible. It really sucks you can't bring in your own music. You could on a PC just play music and then mute the game if you wanted to. We never could get boss rush unlocked, but we kind of know what that is. You'd just be fighting all the boss rush. You'd have to put in a considerably long amount of time to unlock these forms, and then having those forms may not really change your beam type in any way, and I don't really believe that the beam type changing even does that much of a different amount of damage. At best case scenario, I would suspect that this more alien form and more alien beam attacks slightly faster than the normal beam and the zero form does, but you're only talking maybe a difference of 200 milliseconds. Not anything that would be huge, and not really anything that should be hidden behind committing to doing score attack 30 times and completing score attack 30 times, not just playing it 30 times, or getting 100% shot down rate and item collection in area 1 through 5, or playing for over 10 hours. Camera mode has no justification to be locked behind score attack at all, and immortality maybe should be locked behind defeating the first level of difficulty on direct assault, but not the last one. And then infinite overdrive probably should be unlocked after you beat area 5 as a way of just letting players that potentially would have struggled get further and continue to play. So yeah, having multiple versions of direct assault here is crazy. So even if these aren't difficulty, even if it's just different music or different visual color palettes or something, it's still crazy to have a massive 6 different versions of playing the game again. Let's check our ratings. I guess we can take a general idea of where we got in the game. The fact that really only putting in an average amount of effort has me at rank 1943 is a little disappointing. It tells me either not that many people played this game on Steam, which is very believable, or it tells me that a lot of people rage quit and didn't get that far. Now that is for Score Attack Area 1. I'm even higher in the score for Score Attack Area 3, which noticeably you need 150,000 points to beat the high score, and yeah, a ton of people didn't get that high. Score Attack 3, I'm even higher. Score Attack 4, I'm even higher. I'm almost breaking the top 1,000 players on the leaderboard. It may be a case that a lot of people played this game in VR too and were more enthusiastic around that. 19 away to be in the top 1,000 for Score Attack Area 5. We didn't finish Direct Assault, so I don't have a score there. I'm in a much more reasonable score point with the Lost Area. Didn't unlock Boss Rush mode. And if we were to just look at the overall scores, I don't know if that's particularly that informative, in that the top scores are very high and pretty much irrelevant, particularly in part because a lot of these scores could be coming from cheating one way or another. What I would like to see almost is the bottom list, but there's no way to get to the bottom of the list. So it'd be nice if they told me a total. Yeah, so that's Rez Infinite. Something I can say I would recommend playing once. I would recommend playing it with a mouse and turning up the interesting. All of a sudden my cursor stopped working. I'd recommend playing it with the mouse with the sensitivity turned up to the max in the menu. I'd probably recommend not trying to turn the graphics to the highest possible, because you don't get much of a response of a return from that compared to a hyper realistic 3D AAA game. There's some silliness having a merchandise link for this game on the front page, and kind of some silliness in general that there's merchandise links in video games. But that's not really the worst thing ever. If we could get an honest deal between game developers where they would start to sell merchandise through their games instead of trying to have microtransactions or unnecessary DLCs, season passes, games as a service, NFTs, things like that. If all of the worst ways of monetization got thrown out the window and merchandise was replaced with that, that would probably be a little bit nicer. That being said, that almost certainly can never work, because having something fulfilled, made probably in some cheap country like China, whether it's a mug, a t-shirt, or a doll, a figurine, something like that, and then having it shipped all the way to America, and then having it shipped from a warehouse in America to an individual's house, it's just so expensive, and there's just so much room for delays and mistakes to happen that merchandising never really works. That's why digital DLC is way more popular in the first place. Plus, it also crosses this weird line where you have computer programmers, people that make software, effectively trying to sell you physical things that aren't really their expertise. But yeah, definitely feels weird. I'd say also, particularly in this case, what would the merchandising even look like? You're going to get a statue that looks like Eve, maybe? Get a statue that looks like one of the forms of the hacker model. Like, I could see potentially having a statue with a smaller figurine for each of the hacker's forms, the 0 form, 1st form, all the way up to final form and the baby, and then those figurines could be placed around the Eve model and look kind of interesting on the shelf. But that's pretty much it. None of the other enemies or bosses have any real visual attraction to them, and so it really wouldn't make a lot of sense. So if anything, you're most likely going to just have t-shirts or mugs or stickers with the Rez Infinite logo on it, which even the logo's not that interesting. It's a very weird game to have merchandising for. But there's definitely other games where it would make a lot more sense. Character-based games, highly graphic games. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this series. It is definitely awkward. As far as I can tell, I got 9 out of 20 achievements, and there's basically 0% chance that I would get any more. It's just too much work, too much time to invest, and frankly it would blister my thumbs with all the button mashing one way or the other. Yeah, so play it once, give it the old college try, don't get hung up on trying to unlock everything. Experience it and enjoy the experience. No comment, I suppose, if this is one of those games that might be enjoyed if you were a little bit lucid or less lucid, drunk or high. But yeah, probably is one of those kinds of games where people might think it would be more enjoyable in a more receptive state, for lack of a better term. But yeah, I'm not going to particularly recommend that. That's it for this series. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to support me further, there's a link down below in the description box. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.